Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates a caller reporting visible flames and smoke emanating from a residential structure. The caller is audibly distressed and provides a street address, but is hesitant to provide further details about the extent of the fire or specific occupancy. What is the most appropriate initial dispatch action for a public safety telecommunicator adhering to fire service dispatch protocols? Option A. Dispatch a single patrol unit to investigate the report of smoke and flames before committing additional fire resources. Option B. Immediately dispatch a full alarm assignment for a major structure fire, including multiple engine companies and ladder trucks, without further verification. Option C. Dispatch the standard initial response for a residential structure fire to the provided address and continue to gather additional information from the caller while units are en route. Option D. Hold the dispatch of any units until the caller can provide detailed information about the building's construction materials and the exact number of occupants. The correct answer is C. Dispatch the standard initial response for a residential structure fire to the provided address and continue to gather additional information from the caller while units are en route. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in fire service dispatch: prioritizing incoming information and initiating appropriate resource deployment under pressure. The telecommunicator must quickly assess the severity and nature of the incident based on limited, potentially conflicting, or incomplete information. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid response with the requirement to gather sufficient detail to dispatch the correct resources and provide essential information to responding units, all while adhering to established protocols and ensuring firefighter safety. Misinterpretation or delayed action can have severe consequences, including delayed response to a critical situation, misallocation of resources, or failure to provide vital hazard information. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic process of information gathering, verification, and dispatch based on established protocols for structure fires. This aligns with the Incident Command System (ICS) principles of clear communication and standardized procedures. Specifically, it prioritizes confirming the nature of the incident structure fire, identifying the location, and then dispatching the appropriate initial response based on the severity indicated by the caller's description, e.g., visible flames, smoke. This approach ensures that the most critical information is relayed to responding units promptly, allowing them to begin their approach with a basic understanding of the situation. It also allows for the collection of further details while units are en route, which is a standard practice in fire service dispatch to optimize resource management and firefighter safety. This adheres to the fundamental principles of fire service dispatch and ICS, emphasizing efficient and effective incident management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately dispatching a full alarm assignment without confirming the exact nature or location of the incident. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it constitutes a premature and potentially wasteful allocation of resources, bypasses the established protocol of verifying critical incident details before committing significant resources, which can negatively impact response times for other potential emergencies and strain mutual aid agreements unnecessarily. Another incorrect approach is to delay dispatch until all possible details are gathered, including specific building construction or occupancy. This is a critical failure in adhering to the urgency required for fire incidents. While detailed information is valuable, delaying the initial dispatch of resources for a confirmed structure fire based on visible flames or smoke violates the principle of rapid response and can lead to a more severe outcome for the fire and potential occupants. It also fails to provide responding units with timely situational awareness, compromising firefighter safety. A third incorrect approach is to dispatch only a minimal unit without considering the potential for the incident to escalate. This is a failure in resource management and understanding fire codes and procedures. A confirmed structure fire, even if initially appearing small, has the inherent potential to grow rapidly. Dispatching insufficient resources based on an incomplete assessment of the situation can lead to an overwhelmed initial response, increasing the risk to firefighters and the property. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes the immediate safety of the public and responders. This involves a rapid assessment of the caller's information, cross-referencing it with established dispatch protocols for different incident types, and initiating the appropriate level of response. The process should include confirming key details like location and nature of the emergency, then dispatching initial resources while continuing to gather further information to update responding units and manage the incident effectively. This iterative process, guided by ICS principles and specific fire service dispatch guidelines, ensures both speed and accuracy in emergency response. Question 2. Stakeholder feedback indicates that during a high-stress medical emergency call, a public safety telecommunicator, PST, must effectively gather critical information while managing a distressed caller. Which of the following approaches best exemplifies the PST's role and responsibilities according to the Public Safety Telecommunicator, PST certification syllabus? Option A. Immediately dispatch emergency services to the general vicinity based on the caller's initial panic statement, without attempting to confirm the exact location or nature of the incident. Option B. Focus on calming the caller and offering emotional support, delaying specific questions about the emergency until the caller is more composed. Option C. Engage in a lengthy conversation to understand the caller's personal history and the events leading up to the emergency before requesting dispatch. Option D. Prioritize obtaining the exact location of the emergency, the nature of the medical issue, and the number of individuals affected, while simultaneously providing immediate, actionable safety advice to the caller. The correct answer is B. Focus on calming the caller and offering emotional support, delaying specific questions about the emergency until the caller is more composed. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Public Safety Telecommunicator, PST, to balance immediate life-saving actions with the need for accurate information gathering and adherence to established protocols. The caller's emotional distress and the potential for misinformation due to panic create a complex communication environment. The PST must remain calm and in control while extracting critical details necessary for dispatch. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes obtaining essential information for dispatch while providing immediate, actionable safety advice. This aligns with the core mandate of a PST to facilitate a rapid and appropriate emergency response. By asking targeted questions about the nature of the emergency, location, and number of individuals involved, the PST ensures that responding units have the necessary data to effectively manage the situation. Providing immediate safety instructions, such as advising the caller to stay on the line and secure themselves if possible, demonstrates proactive risk mitigation and adherence to best practices in emergency telecommunications, which are often codified in PST certification syllabi and agency protocols. This approach ensures that the dispatch process is initiated efficiently without compromising the caller's safety or the integrity of the information. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that solely focuses on calming the caller without gathering critical dispatch information fails to meet the primary objective of initiating an emergency response. This neglects the regulatory requirement for PSTs to obtain and relay essential data for dispatch, potentially delaying vital assistance. An approach that immediately dispatches units based on incomplete or unverified information, without attempting to gather further details or assess the situation, risks misallocation of resources and can put responders in unnecessary danger. This deviates from protocols that emphasize information gathering and situational awareness before dispatch. An approach that prioritizes extensive questioning about the caller's personal history or non-emergency related details, while the emergency is ongoing, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a lack of focus on the immediate crisis and a disregard for the urgency of the situation, potentially wasting critical time. Professional reasoning. PSTs should employ a structured approach that begins with identifying the emergency and location, followed by gathering essential details for dispatch. Simultaneously, they must provide immediate, life-saving instructions and reassurance to the caller. This decision-making process involves active listening, clear and concise questioning, and the ability to prioritize information under pressure, all while adhering to established protocols and ethical guidelines for public safety telecommunications. Question 3. Investigation of a recurring, intermittent static and garbled audio on a specific radio channel used by multiple responding agencies during a large-scale multi-jurisdictional incident. The telecommunicator notices that the interference seems to correlate with the activation of a particular mobile data terminal, MDT, in a nearby patrol vehicle. The telecommunicator has basic knowledge of radio troubleshooting, but is not authorized to perform system diagnostics or programming. Option A. Access the radio system's administrative interface remotely to investigate the MDT's signal strength and potential interference patterns, and if necessary, temporarily disable the MDT's radio transmission capabilities. Option B. Log the interference as a minor nuisance and continue using the primary channel, assuming it is a temporary atmospheric condition, and only report it if it becomes a persistent and severe problem. Option C. Attempt to verbally instruct the officer with the suspected MDT to power cycle their device, explaining that it might be causing interference, and continue using the primary channel if the static subsides. Option D. Immediately cease using the affected radio channel and attempt to reroute all communications to an alternate, less congested channel, while simultaneously initiating a formal report to the Radio Technical Support Unit, detailing the observed correlation between the MDT and the interference. The correct answer is D. Immediately cease using the affected radio channel and attempt to reroute all communications to an alternate, less congested channel, while simultaneously initiating a formal report to the Radio Technical Support Unit, detailing the observed correlation between the MDT and the interference. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation due to the critical nature of public safety communication and the potential for cascading failures when radio systems are compromised. The telecommunicator must balance the immediate need for information with the long-term integrity and security of the communication network. Careful judgment is required to avoid actions that could exacerbate the problem or violate established protocols. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established protocols for reporting and addressing technical issues. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate clear procedures for system malfunctions and security breaches. By following the defined escalation path, the telecommunicator ensures that the issue is addressed by the appropriate technical personnel, minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or further system degradation. This also upholds the ethical responsibility to maintain the reliability and security of the public safety communication infrastructure. An incorrect approach that involves attempting to diagnose or fix the issue independently without authorization or proper training poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This could lead to accidental data loss, further system instability, or even compromise sensitive information, violating data security regulations and potentially jeopardizing ongoing operations. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the anomaly or delaying reporting, fails to meet the duty of care expected of a public safety telecommunicator. This inaction could have severe consequences if the anomaly is indicative of a critical system failure or a security threat, leading to communication blackouts during emergencies and violating protocols designed to ensure operational readiness. A professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of the observed anomaly against established operating procedures. Telecommunicators must first identify the nature of the issue and its potential impact. They should then consult their agency's protocols for reporting and escalating technical or security concerns. If a clear protocol exists, it must be followed precisely. If the situation is ambiguous, seeking immediate guidance from a supervisor or designated technical support is paramount. The overarching principle is to maintain communication integrity and security while ensuring that all actions are authorized and documented. Question 4. What factors determine the immediate dispatch priority of an incoming emergency call for a public safety telecommunicator operating under U.S. regulatory frameworks for public safety telecommunicator certification? Option A. The caller's perceived level of distress and their ability to articulate the situation clearly. Option B. The type of agency that typically handles the reported incident, regardless of its immediate severity. Option C. The immediate threat to life and property, the number of individuals potentially affected, and the availability of appropriate response resources. Option D. The order in which the calls are received by the Public Safety Answering Point, SAP. Correct answer is C. The immediate threat to life and property, the number of individuals potentially affected, and the availability of appropriate response resources. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Public Safety Telecommunicator, PST, to rapidly assess and prioritize incoming calls, balancing the urgency of potentially life-threatening situations with the need to address all public safety needs. The PST must make critical decisions under pressure, often with incomplete information, to ensure the most appropriate and timely response. This requires a deep understanding of established protocols and the ability to apply them judiciously. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the core principles of emergency call taking as mandated by regulatory frameworks governing public safety telecommunicators. These frameworks emphasize the immediate need to identify and dispatch resources to situations posing the greatest threat to life and property. Prioritizing based on the severity of the incident, the potential for harm, and the availability of resources ensures that the most critical calls receive immediate attention, thereby maximizing the effectiveness of public safety services and adhering to legal and ethical obligations to protect citizens. An incorrect approach that fails to prioritize based on the severity of the incident would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It could lead to delays in dispatching resources to critical emergencies, potentially resulting in preventable loss of life or severe injury. This violates the fundamental duty of care owed to the public and contravenes regulations that mandate efficient and effective emergency response. Another incorrect approach, such as solely relying on the order in which calls are received without considering their nature, would also be a regulatory failure. This ignores the critical need for triage and could result in less severe incidents receiving attention before life-threatening ones, undermining the purpose of a public safety answering point. Furthermore, an approach that involves making assumptions about the severity of a situation without gathering essential information will be a failure in call screening and information gathering protocols, potentially leading to misallocation of resources and delayed response to genuine emergencies. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with active listening and immediate information gathering to determine the nature and severity of the incident. This involves asking clear, concise questions to ascertain the who, what, where, when, and why of the situation. The PST must then apply established call classification and prioritization protocols, considering factors such as immediate danger, the number of people affected, and the potential for escalation. This systematic approach ensures that all necessary information is collected for accurate dispatch, and that resources are allocated efficiently and effectively based on the established hierarchy of emergency response. Question 5. When evaluating a distressed caller who is speaking rapidly and incoherently about a potential emergency, which communication technique is most critical for the Public Safety Telecommunicator, PST, to employ initially to ensure effective information gathering and de-escalation? Option A. Employ active listening, using empathetic statements and brief verbal affirmations, while gently guiding the conversation with open-ended questions. Option B. Focus on relaying radio communication protocols and phonetic alphabet usage to ensure clarity. Option C. Immediately interrupt the caller with direct, closed-ended questions to obtain specific details about the incident. Option D. Advise the caller to calm down and speak slower before attempting to gather any information. The correct answer is C. Immediately interrupt the caller with direct, closed-ended questions to obtain specific details about the incident. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Public Safety Telecommunicator, PST, to manage a high-stress situation involving a potentially volatile individual while simultaneously gathering critical information for emergency response. The PST must balance the immediate need for accurate details with the caller's emotional state, ensuring safety for all involved. Careful judgment is required to de-escalate the situation without compromising the integrity of the information being collected. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes de-escalation and active listening, which are fundamental to effective crisis communication, as outlined in PST certification guidelines. By remaining calm, using empathetic language, and employing open-ended questions, the PST can build rapport and encourage the caller to provide necessary details. This aligns with the ethical obligation to provide prompt and efficient service while ensuring the safety and well-being of the caller and responders. The focus on understanding the caller's perspective and validating their feelings is crucial for overcoming communication barriers and obtaining accurate information, which is a core competency for PSTs. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on rapid information extraction without acknowledging the caller's distress would fail to de-escalate the situation, potentially leading to further agitation and obstruction of critical information. This violates the principle of effective communication and crisis management, which emphasizes building trust. Another incorrect approach that involves making assumptions about the caller's intentions or emotional state without verification can lead to misinterpretations and inappropriate responses, potentially exacerbating the situation and compromising the emergency response. This demonstrates a lack of cultural sensitivity and active listening. An approach that uses overly technical jargon or a dismissive tone would alienate the caller, hindering information flow and failing to meet the standard of professional telephone etiquette and clear, concise speech expected of a PST. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with assessing the caller's emotional state and the immediate safety risks. This is followed by employing de-escalation techniques and active listening to establish a connection. Only then should the PST systematically gather essential information, adapting questioning techniques as needed. Throughout the interaction, maintaining a calm, professional demeanor and adhering to established protocols are paramount. Question 6. System analysis indicates a caller reports their 3-year-old child is turning blue and can't catch their breath. The PST has initiated the call and is aware of the child's age and the reported symptoms. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the PST to take, in accordance with Public Safety Telecommunicator (PST) certification standards for emergency medical dispatch (MD)? Option A. Dispatch an ambulance and then wait for the caller to provide more details before offering any instructions. Option B. Immediately begin providing pre-arrival instructions for assisting with pediatric breathing difficulties while simultaneously gathering essential information for the responding EMS unit. Option C. Provide general advice about staying calm and waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Option D. Prioritize obtaining the child's full name, address, and the caller's relationship to the child before initiating any medical advice. The correct answer is B. Immediately begin providing pre-arrival instructions for assisting with pediatric breathing difficulties while simultaneously gathering essential information for the responding EMS unit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common but critical challenge for public safety telecommunicators, PST, involving a potential pediatric respiratory emergency. The core difficulty lies in the PST's limited information, the urgency of the situation, and the need to provide immediate, life-saving pre-arrival instructions while simultaneously gathering essential details for responding units. The PST must balance the need for rapid assessment and intervention with the potential for misinterpretation or incomplete information, especially when dealing with a distressed caller and a vulnerable patient. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate, life-sustaining pre-arrival instruction based on the most critical symptom presented: difficulty breathing in a child, while also initiating the process of gathering vital information for the responding EMS crew. This aligns with emergency medical dispatch (MD) protocols, which emphasize providing the highest level of care possible before the arrival of professional responders. Specifically, EMD protocols mandate initiating appropriate pre-arrival instructions for common life-threatening conditions, such as respiratory distress in a pediatric patient, which often involves guiding the caller on how to assist the child's breathing. Simultaneously, the PST must begin the systematic collection of information required by EMD protocols to ensure the responding EMS unit has the necessary details for an appropriate response and patient care. This approach is ethically sound, as it places the patient's immediate well-being as the paramount concern, and it is regulatory compliant by adhering to established EMD protocols for pediatric emergencies. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that delays pre-arrival instructions to first gather extensive demographic information or detailed medical history is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. EMD protocols are designed to facilitate immediate life-saving interventions. Delaying instructions for breathing assistance in a child experiencing respiratory distress can lead to irreversible harm or death, violating the ethical duty to act and the regulatory requirement to provide appropriate pre-arrival care. An approach that focuses solely on dispatching an ambulance without providing any pre-arrival instructions is also a failure. While dispatching resources is crucial, EMD protocols require the PST to actively engage with the caller and provide guidance that can improve patient outcomes before EMS arrives. This omission neglects a core component of EMD responsibility and can result in a worse patient outcome. An approach that provides generic medical advice without specific reference to the caller's description of the child's symptoms is insufficient. EMD protocols require the PST to tailor instructions to the specific emergency presented. Providing nonspecific advice fails to address the immediate life-threatening nature of pediatric respiratory distress and can be ineffective or even harmful. Professional reasoning. PSTs must employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes immediate life threats. This involves active listening to identify the chief complaint, recognizing critical signs and symptoms, like difficulty breathing in a child, and immediately initiating the most appropriate EMD protocol for that condition. Concurrently, the PST must systematically gather essential information for the responding EMS crew, following established EMD protocols for information gathering. This dual tasking requires training, adherence to protocols, and the ability to remain calm and focused under pressure. The PST's role is not merely to dispatch, but to actively manage the emergency until professional help arrives, a responsibility governed by strict regulatory frameworks and ethical considerations. Question 7. The risk matrix shows a high probability of officer safety compromise due to delayed information dissemination during a reported vehicle pursuit involving a suspect with a known history of violence. The telecommunicator has received initial dispatch information regarding the vehicle's make, model, and color, but the reporting party is still providing details about the suspect's physical appearance and clothing. Which of the following actions best balances immediate operational needs with regulatory compliance? Option A. Dispatch units with the vehicle description and verbally relay the suspect details as they are received, without formal logging or verification, to expedite the response. Option B. Dispatch units with only the vehicle description and advise them to await further suspect information via a separate channel, without logging the suspect details until the pursuit concludes. Option C. Delay dispatch until the reporting party has finished providing all suspect details, then enter all information into NSIC before dispatching any units. Option D. Immediately dispatch units with the available vehicle description and request the reporting party to continue providing suspect details while the pursuit is ongoing, ensuring all information is logged for subsequent NSIC entry. Correct answer is D. Immediately dispatch units with the available vehicle description and request the reporting party to continue providing suspect details while the pursuit is ongoing, ensuring all information is logged for subsequent NSIC entry. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the Public Safety Telecommunicator, PST, to balance the immediate need for accurate information dissemination with the critical imperative of officer safety and adherence to strict data entry protocols. The PST must quickly process potentially fragmented information from multiple sources, identify key details for dispatch, and ensure that all data entered into the National Crime Information Center (NCIC) database is accurate and compliant with Criminal Justice Information System (CJIS) guidelines. The pressure to act swiftly in a dynamic situation can lead to errors if not managed with a systematic and protocol-driven approach. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the immediate safety of responding officers by relaying essential descriptive information and then systematically ensures data integrity for the NSIC entry. This aligns with CJIS compliance, which mandates accurate and timely reporting of criminal justice information. By confirming details and adhering to NSIC entry standards, the PST minimizes the risk of false information being disseminated or entered into national databases, which could have significant legal and operational consequences. This methodical process ensures that critical information is both actionable for law enforcement and compliant with federal regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed without verification would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It risks disseminating inaccurate suspect or vehicle descriptions, potentially leading officers to the wrong location or to engage with innocent individuals, thereby compromising officer safety and public trust. Furthermore, entering unverified or incomplete information into NSIC violates CJIS compliance, which carries severe penalties for agencies and individuals, including loss of access to vital information systems. Another incorrect approach that delays dispatch to conduct a full NSIC background check on every individual mentioned before dispatching units would be an operational failure. While NSIC checks are crucial, the immediate priority in an active crime scenario is officer safety and the rapid deployment of resources. Delaying dispatch for non-critical pre-dispatch checks can endanger officers and allow suspects to escape. This approach fails to appropriately prioritize immediate threats and operational needs. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal information or assumptions rather than confirmed details from the reporting party or initial responding officers is also a regulatory and ethical failure. This introduces a high probability of misinformation, directly impacting officer safety and the effectiveness of the law enforcement response. It also violates the principle of accurate data reporting required by CGIS. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a tiered approach. 1. Prioritize immediate officer safety and life-saving information. 2. Dispatch units with the most critical, verified information available. 3. Systematically gather and verify additional details for comprehensive reporting and database entry. 4. Adhere strictly to established protocols for NSIC and CGIS compliance throughout the entire process. Question 8. The control framework reveals that a caller is requesting information about a neighbor's medical condition, stating they are concerned about the neighbor's well-being. The caller mentions the neighbor has a known chronic illness. As a public safety telecommunicator, PST, what is the most appropriate course of action to uphold legal and ethical standards? Option A. State that you cannot disclose any medical information about individuals due to privacy laws. Option B. Advise the caller to contact the neighbor directly to inquire about their health. Option C. Inform the caller about the neighbor's chronic illness to alleviate their concerns. Option D. Ask the caller for the neighbor's specific diagnosis to better assess the situation. The correct answer is A. State that you cannot disclose any medical information about individuals due to privacy laws. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common yet critical challenge for public safety telecommunicators, PST, involving a potential breach of confidentiality and data privacy. The caller's request for information about a neighbor, coupled with the mention of a medical condition, directly implicates HIPAA regulations and general professional ethics regarding patient privacy. The PST must balance the caller's perceived urgency with their legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive information. The challenge lies in discerning the caller's true intent and the potential for harm versus the strict prohibition against unauthorized disclosure of protected health information. 5. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to legal and ethical mandates. By stating that they cannot disclose medical information due to privacy laws, the PST correctly upholds HIPAA regulations, which strictly govern the handling of PHI. This action demonstrates an understanding of the PST's duty to protect sensitive data and avoid civil or criminal liability. It also maintains professional integrity by refusing to engage in unauthorized information sharing, thereby reinforcing trust in the public safety system. This approach aligns with the legal requirements for PSTs to maintain confidentiality and handle information responsibly. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves attempting to verify the caller's identity and the neighbor's well-being by asking for specific details about the neighbor's condition. This action, even with good intentions, risks inadvertently disclosing PHI if the caller is not authorized to receive it, or if the PST misinterprets the situation. It bypasses the established protocols for handling such requests and could lead to a HIPAA violation. Another incorrect approach is to directly inform the caller that the neighbor has a specific medical condition, even if the PST believes the caller has a legitimate concern. This is a direct violation of HIPAA and professional ethics, as it constitutes unauthorized disclosure of PHI. The PST has no authority to release such information without proper authorization. A further incorrect approach is to dismiss the caller's concerns outright without offering any appropriate guidance or alternative actions. While the PST cannot disclose information, they can, within legal and ethical boundaries, offer general advice or direct the caller to appropriate resources if their concern is about the neighbor's safety and not about obtaining specific medical details. Simply refusing to engage further without offering any form of assistance or explanation can be perceived as unprofessional and may leave a genuine concern unaddressed. Professional reasoning. PSTs should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core issue, a request for potentially protected information. The next step is to consult relevant legal and ethical guidelines, specifically HIPAA in this context. The PST must then assess whether fulfilling the request would violate these guidelines. If a violation is likely, the PST must refuse the request while clearly and professionally explaining the legal basis for the refusal. Finally, the PST should consider if there are any permissible actions that can be taken to address the caller's underlying concern without breaching confidentiality, such as advising them to contact emergency services if they believe there is an immediate threat to safety. Question 9. Process analysis reveals that the computer-aided dispatch (CAD) system is intermittently displaying incorrect location data for incoming 911 calls, despite the automatic number identification/automatic location identification (ANI/OLI) system appearing to function normally. The telecommunicator has observed this for several minutes. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure public safety and system integrity? Option A. Reboot the CAD system to see if the intermittent issue resolves itself. Option B. Immediately escalate the issue to the technical support team, providing all observed details, and continue to manually verify location data for incoming calls using available resources while awaiting their response. Option C. Continue dispatching calls as usual, assuming the ANI/ALI data is correct and the CAD display is a minor glitch. Option D. Attempt to manually re-enter the location data into the CAD system for each affected call to correct the discrepancy. The correct answer is B. Immediately escalate the issue to the technical support team, providing all observed details, and continue to manually verify location data for incoming calls using available resources while awaiting their response. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public safety telecommunications, ensuring the integrity and functionality of critical technology systems that directly impact response times and public safety. The professional challenge lies in balancing immediate operational needs with long-term system health and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to prioritize actions that maintain service while adhering to established protocols and standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for addressing a system anomaly. This aligns with regulatory requirements for maintaining operational continuity and data integrity. By following established troubleshooting procedures, involving appropriate technical support, and documenting all actions, the telecommunicator ensures that the issue is resolved efficiently and that a clear audit trail exists. This proactive and methodical approach minimizes the risk of further system degradation or data loss, which are critical concerns under public safety telecommunications regulations. Adherence to maintenance schedules and reporting procedures is also a key component of regulatory compliance, ensuring that systems are functioning within specified parameters. An incorrect approach that bypasses established troubleshooting protocols and directly attempts system modifications without authorization or proper understanding poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. Such actions could lead to unintended system consequences, such as data corruption, service interruption, or security breaches, all of which violate the duty to maintain reliable public safety communications. Furthermore, failing to document the issue or the attempted resolution constitutes a breach of record-keeping requirements, hindering post-incident analysis and accountability. Ignoring the potential impact on other integrated systems, such as CAD or GIS, demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interconnected nature of public safety technology, a failure that can have cascading negative effects on emergency response. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the established standard operating procedures, SOP, for system anomalies. This includes recognizing when an issue is beyond the scope of a telecommunicator's direct intervention and requires escalation to technical support or a supervisor. Documentation is paramount at every step, from initial observation to resolution. Professionals must also be aware of the potential impact of any action on interconnected systems and prioritize actions that maintain the integrity and availability of the 911 and CAD systems. Cybersecurity awareness dictates that any troubleshooting should not compromise system security. Question 10. Cost-benefit analysis shows that investing in advanced mapping software and comprehensive jurisdictional boundary data for public safety telecommunicators, PST, significantly reduces response times and improves resource allocation efficiency. When a caller reports an incident at the old mill near Elm Street, and the PST has access to GIS data, what is the most appropriate approach to verify the location? Option A. Ask the caller for the exact street address of the old mill and the nearest cross street. Then cross-reference this information with GIS data and known jurisdictional boundaries. Option B. Inform the caller that the description is too vague and advise them to find a more precise address before calling back. Option C. Immediately dispatch units to the most common old mill landmark within the PST's primary service area, assuming the caller is familiar with local history. Option D. Rely solely on the caller's description of Elm Street and dispatch units to the closest intersection of Elm Street to a known industrial area, without further verification. The correct answer is C. Immediately dispatch units to the most common old mill landmark within the PST's primary service area, assuming the caller is familiar with local history. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public safety telecommunicator, PST, to balance the immediate need for accurate location information with the potential for misinterpretation of geographic data, especially when dealing with rapidly evolving situations or incomplete information. The PST must exercise sound judgment to ensure the most effective and efficient dispatch of resources, directly impacting public safety. The inherent complexity of urban geography, including varying addressing systems, and the potential for landmark ambiguity, necessitates a systematic and informed approach to location verification. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a multifaceted verification process that leverages available technology and established protocols. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate accurate information gathering and dissemination for emergency response. By cross-referencing multiple data points, such as GPS coordinates, known landmarks, and jurisdictional boundaries, the PST minimizes the risk of dispatching resources to the wrong location. This systematic verification is ethically sound as it ensures the responsible allocation of public safety resources and upholds the duty of care to the public. Adherence to established protocols for location verification, often detailed in PST certification guidelines, is paramount. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely relying on the initial caller-provided address without independent verification. This fails to meet regulatory requirements for thorough information gathering and introduces a significant risk of error. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence, potentially leading to delayed response times or dispatch to an incorrect scene, jeopardizing the safety of both the public and responding personnel. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed over accuracy by dispatching based on a single, unconfirmed piece of information, such as a partial street name or a vague landmark description. This violates the core principle of accurate information dissemination mandated by PST certification standards. The ethical failure lies in the potential for misallocation of critical resources, which can have life-threatening consequences. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss the caller's description of a landmark as unreliable without attempting to cross-reference it with mapping software or other available resources. This demonstrates a failure to utilize all available tools and knowledge bases, which is contrary to best practices for location verification. The ethical implication is a missed opportunity to confirm or refine location information, potentially leading to dispatch errors. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with active listening and information gathering from the caller. This is followed by immediate utilization of available technological tools, e.g., CAD systems, mapping software, GIS, to corroborate the caller's information. If discrepancies or ambiguities arise, the PST should engage in further questioning of the caller, employing specific techniques to clarify location details. Escalation to a supervisor or other specialized units for complex location challenges should also be considered as per established protocols. The ultimate goal is to achieve the highest degree of certainty regarding the incident location before dispatching resources. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate a pattern of increased stress-related absences among public safety telecommunicators following prolonged exposure to high-acuity incidents. Considering the regulatory framework for public safety telecommunicator certification, which of the following represents the most effective and ethically sound approach to mitigate these risks and support telecommunicator wellness? Option A. Implementing mandatory, regular critical incident stress debriefings, CIST, and establishing a formal peer support program, alongside promoting access to mental health resources and encouraging physical fitness and work-life balance strategies. Option B. Encouraging individual telecommunicators to develop personal coping mechanisms and stress management techniques, with the expectation that they will manage their own emotional responses to critical incidents. Option C. Discouraging telecommunicators from discussing stressful incidents with colleagues or supervisors, and advising them to avoid seeking professional mental health assistance to maintain a perception of strength. Option D. Focusing solely on operational efficiency and response times, with the understanding that telecommunicators are expected to maintain composure and resilience without additional organizational support for stress management. The correct answer is A. Implementing mandatory, regular critical incident stress debriefings, CIST, and establishing a formal peer support program, alongside promoting access to mental health resources and encouraging physical fitness and work-life balance strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for public safety telecommunicators, PST, where the emotional toll of repeated exposure to traumatic events can lead to significant stress and potential burnout. The difficulty lies in balancing the immediate operational demands of the job with the long-term need for mental and emotional well-being. PSTs are often the first point of contact in crises, and their ability to remain effective is directly linked to their capacity to manage the psychological impact of their work. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes proactive and structured support mechanisms designed to mitigate the effects of critical incident stress. This aligns with best practices and regulatory frameworks that mandate or strongly recommend comprehensive wellness programs for public safety personnel. Specifically, the inclusion of critical incident stress debriefing, CIST, and the establishment of peer support programs are recognized as vital components of a robust stress management strategy. These interventions provide a safe and confidential environment for PSTs to process traumatic experiences, share coping strategies, and receive support from trained colleagues or professionals. This approach directly addresses the need for emotional regulation and resilience building, which are crucial for maintaining mental health and preventing burnout, thereby ensuring continued operational effectiveness and adherence to ethical obligations of self-care and professional responsibility. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on individual coping mechanisms without acknowledging the systemic nature of stress in this profession. While individual resilience is important, relying solely on personal strategies without organizational support can lead to isolation and exacerbate stress. This fails to meet the professional standard of care that recognizes the need for structured support systems and can be seen as a failure to adhere to guidelines that promote a supportive work environment. Another incorrect approach prioritizes immediate operational needs above all else, suggesting that PSTs should simply push through stressful situations. This approach disregards the well-documented psychological impact of critical incidents and the potential for severe mental health consequences, including burnout and post-traumatic stress. It directly contradicts ethical obligations to protect the well-being of personnel and can lead to impaired judgment, increased errors, and a decline in overall public safety service quality. Furthermore, it neglects the importance of proactive stress management and burnout prevention, which are essential for long-term sustainability in the role. A third incorrect approach suggests that seeking professional mental health support is a sign of weakness and should be avoided. This is a harmful misconception that directly undermines the importance of maintaining mental health. Regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines for public safety professionals increasingly emphasize the importance of seeking and utilizing mental health resources. Failing to do so can lead to unaddressed stress and trauma, negatively impacting performance and personal well-being, and potentially violating professional responsibilities to maintain fitness for duty. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that integrates immediate operational demands with a commitment to long-term well-being. This involves recognizing the signs of stress and burnout in oneself and colleagues, actively participating in and advocating for organizational wellness programs, and understanding that seeking support is a sign of strength and professionalism. A critical incident response plan should include provisions for psychological support, and ongoing training in stress management and resilience building should be a priority. This proactive and supportive approach ensures that PSTs can effectively manage the inherent stresses of their role while maintaining their mental and physical health, thereby upholding their duty to public safety. Question 12. Cost-benefit analysis shows that investing in specialized communication tools and training for public safety telecommunicators, PST, is crucial for effective emergency response. Considering a scenario where a PST receives a distressed call from an individual speaking limited English, reporting a domestic dispute involving a child and what appears to be a mental health crisis, which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to regulatory requirements and ethical best practices for a PST? Option A. Attempt to communicate solely in English, asking the caller to speak slowly and clearly, and wait for them to provide all details before considering additional communication support. Option B. Prioritize dispatching law enforcement for the domestic dispute, and then attempt to follow up with the caller to address the language barrier and mental health concerns. Option C. Immediately activate language line services to facilitate clear communication, while simultaneously gathering critical information for dispatch and initiating de-escalation techniques. Option D. Focus on calming the caller down through empathy and reassurance, delaying the use of language line until the emotional intensity of the call subsides. The correct answer is C. Immediately activate language line services to facilitate clear communication, while simultaneously gathering critical information for dispatch and initiating de-escalation techniques. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a significant challenge for a public safety telecommunicator, PST, due to the immediate need to de-escalate a volatile situation involving a potential mental health crisis and domestic violence, while also managing the communication barrier posed by a language difference. The PST must rapidly assess the urgency, prioritize safety, and employ appropriate communication strategies under extreme pressure. The presence of a child further elevates the stakes, demanding a heightened focus on their well-being. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate safety and effective communication by utilizing available resources to bridge the language gap and address the crisis. This aligns with best professional practices for PSTs, which emphasize rapid assessment, de-escalation techniques, and the use of specialized services like language line. Regulatory frameworks for PST certification typically mandate proficiency in handling diverse callers and crisis situations, including those involving mental health and domestic violence. Ethical guidelines also stress the importance of providing equitable service to all individuals, regardless of their language proficiency or mental state. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach might involve attempting to communicate solely through the distressed individual's limited English without utilizing language line. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for providing effective communication to all individuals, potentially leading to misunderstandings, delayed or incorrect dispatch of resources, and an escalation of the crisis. Ethically, it demonstrates a failure to provide equitable service. Another incorrect approach could be to delay dispatching emergency services while attempting to fully understand the situation through the language barrier. This directly violates the PST's primary responsibility to ensure public safety by promptly relaying critical information to responding units. Regulatory guidelines for PSTs invariably stress the importance of timely and accurate information dissemination in emergency situations. A third incorrect approach might be to focus solely on the domestic violence aspect without adequately addressing the apparent mental health crisis or the language barrier. This demonstrates a failure to conduct a comprehensive assessment, which is a core competency for PSTs. It could lead to an inappropriate response from law enforcement or emergency medical services, failing to address the full spectrum of the caller's needs and potentially exacerbating the situation. Professional reasoning. PSTs should employ a decision-making framework that begins with immediate threat assessment and safety prioritization. This involves quickly identifying potential dangers to the caller, responding personnel, and the public. Concurrently, the PST must assess communication barriers and initiate appropriate resources, such as language line, to overcome them. The framework then moves to information gathering, de-escalation techniques, and the appropriate dispatch of emergency services based on the assessed needs. Continuous reassessment of the situation and adaptation of communication strategies are crucial throughout the call. Question 13. The performance metrics show a consistent trend of increased call handling times and a slight rise in missed critical information points during emergency calls across several telecommunicators. Which of the following actions best addresses this situation within a public safety telecommunicator (PST) certification framework? Option A. Immediately issue formal warnings to all telecommunicators exhibiting increased call handling times and missed information points, citing performance deficiencies, and requiring them to attend a general, unspecific customer service workshop. Option B. Focus on implementing a new, complex dispatch software system, assuming that improved technology will naturally resolve the observed performance issues without direct intervention or analysis of current telecommunicator performance. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of call recordings for the affected telecommunicators. Analyze the data to pinpoint specific communication breakdowns or procedural deviations, and then implement targeted coaching and refresher training focused on those identified areas, followed by ongoing monitoring. Option D. Rely on peer reviews and informal feedback sessions to address the performance trends, without a structured data analysis or formal training plan, trusting that telecommunicators will self-correct over time. Correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of call recordings for the affected telecommunicators. Analyze the data to pinpoint specific communication breakdowns or procedural deviations, and then implement targeted coaching and refresher training focused on those identified areas, followed by ongoing monitoring. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public safety telecommunicator (PST) to interpret performance data and translate it into actionable improvements that directly impact public safety and departmental efficiency. The PST must balance the need for objective evaluation with the human element of performance, ensuring that feedback is constructive and leads to genuine skill development rather than punitive measures. Careful judgment is required to identify systemic issues versus individual performance gaps, and to implement solutions that are both effective and compliant with established quality assurance programs. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the core principles of quality assurance and continuous improvement mandated by PST certification standards. By focusing on data-driven identification of specific skill deficits and implementing targeted training and feedback, the PST directly addresses areas for improvement. This proactive and systematic method ensures that training is relevant and effective, leading to enhanced call handling, improved response times, and ultimately, better public safety outcomes. This approach fosters a culture of learning and accountability, which is a cornerstone of professional development in public safety communications. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on punitive measures for underperforming individuals, without investigating the root causes or offering support, fails to meet regulatory requirements for a comprehensive quality assurance program. Such an approach neglects the ethical obligation to provide opportunities for development and improvement, potentially leading to demoralization and increased turnover. It also fails to identify systemic issues within the training or operational processes that might be contributing to performance dips. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal bias rather than objective performance metrics and data analysis is a direct violation of quality assurance principles. This can lead to unfair evaluations, inconsistent application of standards, and a lack of trust in the QA process. It undermines the integrity of the performance evaluation system and fails to identify genuine areas for improvement based on objective evidence. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing broad, unspecific training initiatives without first identifying specific areas for improvement based on data analysis is inefficient and ineffective. This wastes resources and fails to address the actual needs of the telecommunicators, thereby failing to achieve the desired quality improvements. It demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking in the application of training and development resources. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of performance data, identification of trends and outliers, investigation into the root causes of performance deviations, and the development of targeted interventions. This includes providing constructive feedback, offering appropriate training and development opportunities, and regularly reassessing performance to ensure continuous improvement. Adherence to established QA protocols and ethical considerations regarding fairness and professional development is paramount. Question 14. Market research demonstrates that public perception significantly influences trust in emergency services. You overhear a colleague, who is also a public safety telecommunicator, PST, sharing inaccurate but positive-sounding information about a recent, sensitive incident with a member of the public during a non-emergency interaction. Your supervisor, who is present, does not intervene and appears to tacitly approve of the colleague's approach to maintain a positive public image. You are aware of the factual inaccuracies and their potential to mislead. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Discreetly and professionally inform your supervisor about the factual inaccuracies and express concern about the potential negative impact of misinformation, suggesting a follow-up clarification. Option B. Ignore the situation, as it is a non-emergency interaction and not your direct responsibility to correct a colleague's statement. Option C. Privately approach your colleague after the interaction and explain the importance of factual accuracy, hoping they will self-correct in the future. Option D. Publicly correct your colleague's statement in front of the member of the public to ensure immediate accuracy. The correct answer is A. Discreetly and professionally inform your supervisor about the factual inaccuracies and express concern about the potential negative impact of misinformation, suggesting a follow-up clarification. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a telecommunicator's duty to provide accurate and timely information and the pressure to maintain a positive public image for their agency. The telecommunicator is caught between a potentially misleading public statement and the need to uphold professional integrity and factual reporting. This requires careful judgment to balance public perception with the ethical obligation to truthfulness and the potential impact on public safety operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing factual accuracy and professional integrity over immediate public relations concerns. This aligns with the core ethical principles of public safety telecommunication, which demand honesty, transparency, and the provision of reliable information to the public and other agencies. By correcting the misinformation, the telecommunicator upholds the agency's credibility in the long run and ensures that public safety decisions are based on accurate data. This demonstrates a commitment to professional standards and ethical conduct, which are paramount in this field. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves remaining silent or passively allowing the misinformation to persist. This is ethically problematic as it constitutes a failure to correct a known falsehood, potentially leading to public confusion, misinformed decisions, and erosion of trust in the agency. It violates the principle of truthfulness and can have negative consequences for public safety. Another incorrect approach is to publicly contradict the supervisor without following established protocols. While the intention might be to correct misinformation, doing so in an unprofessional or insubordinate manner can create internal conflict, undermine leadership, and damage team cohesion. This approach fails to demonstrate effective communication and conflict resolution skills within the organizational structure. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to subtly downplay or reframe the misinformation without directly correcting it. This is a form of deception, as it avoids direct confrontation but still allows the inaccurate information to remain in the public sphere. It compromises professional integrity and fails to address the root of the problem, potentially leading to further misunderstandings. Professional reasoning. Professionals in public safety telecommunication should employ a structured decision-making process when faced with such dilemmas. This involves 1. Identifying the core ethical conflict. 2. Gathering all relevant facts and understanding the potential impact of each course of action. 3. Consulting relevant agency policies and professional ethical guidelines. 4. Communicating concerns through appropriate channels, starting with immediate supervisors if possible and escalating if necessary. 5. Prioritizing accuracy, integrity, and the public's right to truthful information while maintaining professional decorum. Question 15. Governance review demonstrates that a public safety telecommunicator, PST, is handling a call from an individual whose accent and speech patterns suggest a non-native English speaker. The caller is describing a situation that appears to be an emergency, but their explanation is fragmented and difficult to follow, with occasional pauses and what might be cultural expressions of distress. The PSD is concerned about accurately understanding the nature and severity of the incident to dispatch the correct resources. Which of the following approaches best reflects the PST's professional responsibilities in this situation? Option A. Express frustration with the caller's communication style and attempt to rush through the questioning to get to the core of the issue, assuming the caller will eventually provide the necessary details. Option B. Patiently ask clarifying questions, rephrasing information to confirm understanding, and utilize available language assistance resources if necessary, while maintaining a calm and respectful demeanor. Option C. Make assumptions about the nature of the emergency based on the caller's perceived cultural background, and proceed with a standard dispatch protocol for similar situations. Option D. Politely inform the caller that their English is not clear enough to proceed and suggest they find someone who can translate, as the PSD cannot risk misinterpreting the situation. The correct answer is B. Patiently ask clarifying questions, rephrasing information to confirm understanding, and utilize available language assistance resources if necessary, while maintaining a calm and respectful demeanor. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the public safety telecommunicator, PST, to navigate a situation where a caller's cultural background may influence their communication style and perception of urgency, potentially leading to misinterpretation or delayed response. The PSD must balance the need for clear, efficient information gathering with the imperative to treat all callers with respect and understanding, avoiding assumptions based on perceived cultural norms. The potential for implicit bias to affect the PST's judgment is a significant concern. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing active listening, seeking clarification, and employing culturally sensitive communication techniques. This aligns with the core ethical principles of public safety telecommunication, which mandate providing equitable and effective service to all members of the community, regardless of their background. Specifically, it upholds the principle of treating all individuals with dignity and respect, as outlined in professional conduct guidelines for PSTs. By actively working to overcome potential language barriers and cultural misunderstandings through patient questioning and confirmation, the PST ensures accurate information is gathered and appropriate resources are dispatched, fulfilling their primary duty of care. This approach directly addresses the requirement for cultural competency and sensitivity in communication with diverse populations. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that dismisses the caller's concerns or becomes impatient due to perceived cultural differences represents a failure in cultural competency and sensitivity. This can lead to a breakdown in communication, a failure to gather critical information, and potentially a delayed or inappropriate response, violating the PST's duty to provide effective public safety services. Such an approach may also reflect implicit bias, where unconscious stereotypes influence the PST's perception of the caller's urgency or credibility. An approach that relies on stereotypes or makes assumptions about the caller's needs based on their perceived cultural background is a direct violation of ethical guidelines against prejudice and bias. This can alienate the caller, create distrust, and hinder the PST's ability to obtain necessary information. It demonstrates a lack of cultural awareness and fails to uphold the principle of diversity and inclusion in public safety. An approach that focuses solely on the PST's own communication style without adapting to the caller's needs, especially when language barriers or cultural communication differences are present, is unprofessional. This can lead to frustration for both parties and compromise the effectiveness of the emergency response. It signifies a lack of cultural competency and a failure to communicate effectively with diverse populations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with recognizing the inherent diversity of the public they serve. This involves a commitment to ongoing training in cultural awareness and implicit bias. When faced with a challenging communication scenario, the PST should first pause and assess the situation, actively listening for cues that suggest a cultural or language barrier. The next step is to employ open-ended questions and paraphrasing to confirm understanding. If a language barrier is suspected, the PST should utilize available language line services or inform the caller of the limitation and explore alternative communication methods. Throughout the interaction, maintaining a calm, patient, and respectful demeanor is paramount, focusing on the shared goal of resolving the emergency. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals a need to enhance response times, prompting a discussion on adopting new communication protocols. As a certified public safety telecommunicator, PST, what is the most appropriate approach to ensure that any professional development undertaken to support these new protocols aligns with your certification requirements? Option A. Seek out and complete training programs and workshops specifically approved by the PST certification body that focus on the new communication protocols and related best practices. Option B. Prioritize learning the new protocols through online forums and self-study without seeking formal, certified training. Option C. Focus solely on implementing the new protocols operationally, assuming that the skills gained will be sufficient for future certification renewal. Option D. Immediately begin using the new communication protocols based on informal guidance from experienced colleagues to improve response times. The correct answer is A. Seek out and complete training programs and workshops specifically approved by the PST certification body that focus on the new communication protocols and related best practices. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for public safety telecommunicators, PST, where a perceived need for immediate operational improvement clashes with the structured requirements for professional development and certification. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of operational demands with the necessity of adhering to regulatory frameworks for ongoing training and skill enhancement. PSTs must exercise careful judgment to ensure that any adopted practices are not only effective, but also compliant with established standards, thereby maintaining the integrity of their certification and the quality of public safety services. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes proactive engagement with the established regulatory framework for PST certification. This involves identifying approved training programs, understanding continuing education requirements, and seeking out resources that align with best practices and skill development as mandated by the certification body. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses the core tenets of the PST certification, ensuring that all professional development activities contribute to maintaining and enhancing the telecommunicator's competency in a manner recognized and validated by the governing authority. Adherence to these requirements is not merely procedural. It is a fundamental ethical obligation to the public, ensuring that certified PSTs possess the up-to-date knowledge and skills necessary to perform their critical duties effectively and safely. This also aligns with the principle of continuous improvement, a cornerstone of public safety operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing new technologies or procedures without verifying their alignment with the PST certification's training and continuing education requirements represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the established quality control mechanisms designed to ensure that all PSTs meet a consistent standard of proficiency. Such an approach risks introducing unvetted practices that could compromise public safety or lead to disciplinary action for noncompliance with certification mandates. Relying solely on informal peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, while valuable for collegiality, is insufficient to meet formal continuing education requirements. This approach fails to provide documented, verifiable training that is recognized by the certification body. It also risks perpetuating outdated or incorrect information, as informal knowledge may not be based on current best practices or regulatory updates. Focusing exclusively on immediate operational needs without considering the long-term implications for professional development and certification renewal is a short-sighted strategy. This neglects the regulatory obligation to maintain certification, which is essential for continued employment and the provision of reliable public safety services. It also hinders the telecommunicator's growth and ability to adapt to evolving public safety landscapes. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance as the foundation for all professional development activities. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the specific requirements of the PST certification, including continuing education hours, approved training providers, and renewal processes. 2. Proactively researching and identifying training opportunities that directly address these requirements and align with identified skill gaps or emerging best practices. 3. Documenting all completed training meticulously to facilitate the certification renewal process. 4. Consulting with supervisors or certification bodies when in doubt about the acceptability of a particular training or development activity. This systematic approach ensures that professional growth is both effective and compliant, safeguarding both the individual's certification and the public's safety. Question 17. The assessment process reveals a situation where a caller reports a loud argument escalating in a neighboring apartment, with sounds of objects being thrown. Simultaneously, another call comes in reporting a minor traffic accident with no reported injuries. Based on established public safety telecommunicator (PST) certification protocols for incident prioritization and classification, which of the following represents the most appropriate initial action for determining the urgency and required resource allocation? Option A. Prioritizing the traffic accident call due to its immediate, verifiable nature and delaying the response to the apartment until further details can be gathered from the caller about the nature of the argument. Option B. Attempting to gather extensive background information on the individuals involved in the apartment argument before dispatching any units to ensure the most appropriate response. Option C. Immediately dispatching a patrol unit to the apartment where the loud argument is occurring, classifying it as a high-priority incident due to the potential for violence and domestic disturbance, while simultaneously initiating the process for the traffic accident call. Option D. Classifying both incidents as medium priority and waiting for additional units to become available before dispatching to either location. The correct answer is C. Immediately dispatching a patrol unit to the apartment where the loud argument is occurring, classifying it as a high-priority incident due to the potential for violence and domestic disturbance, while simultaneously initiating the process for the traffic accident call. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical juncture in public safety telecommunication, where a telecommunicator must rapidly evaluate incoming information to determine the appropriate level of response. This scenario is professionally challenging because it demands immediate, accurate judgment under pressure, with direct consequences for public safety and resource allocation. The telecommunicator must balance the urgency of the situation with the available resources, adhering strictly to established protocol to ensure efficient and effective emergency response. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the most immediate threats to life and property, aligning with the core mission of public safety telecommunication. This is ethically mandated by the principle of beneficence, aiming to do the most good for the greatest number of people in distress. Regulatory frameworks for public safety telecommunicator (PST) certification, such as those governing emergency dispatch in the United States, emphasize the use of standardized protocols and guidelines for incident classification and prioritization. These protocols are designed to ensure that the most severe incidents receive the highest priority, thereby optimizing resource deployment and minimizing response times for critical situations. This systematic approach minimizes the risk of misclassification and ensures that all calls are handled according to their objective severity, as defined by established criteria. An incorrect approach that prioritizes a call based solely on the caller's perceived emotional state, without a thorough assessment of the objective incident severity according to protocol, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This deviates from established PST certification standards that mandate objective classification based on incident type and potential harm. Ethically, it violates the principle of justice by potentially diverting resources from a more critical situation to one that is less severe, simply due to the caller's demeanor. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying classification until all details are exhaustively gathered, even when initial information clearly indicates a high-priority incident, is a failure in operational efficiency and adherence to time-sensitive response requirements. This can lead to delayed dispatch of critical resources, directly impacting patient outcomes or the containment of dangerous situations, and is contrary to the principles of effective incident management and resource allocation mandated by PST certification guidelines. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, protocol-driven assessment. This begins with active listening to gather initial information, followed by immediate application of established incident classification criteria. The telecommunicator must then assess the potential for immediate harm or escalation, cross-referencing this with the defined priority levels within their agency's protocols. Resource allocation should be a direct consequence of this classification, ensuring that the response is commensurate with the assessed risk and incident type. Continuous reevaluation of the situation, as new information becomes available, is also crucial for adapting resource deployment and ensuring the most effective outcome. Question 18. Quality control measures reveal a caller reporting a strong chemical odor emanating from a commercial property with visible fumes escaping from a loading dock. The caller sounds distressed and mentions that several employees have exited the building. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the public safety telecommunicator to take? Option A. Hold the dispatch of any units until the fire department can confirm the nature of the incident through a preliminary investigation. Option B. Dispatch appropriate fire service units with a hazardous materials response designation and relay all available information, including the caller's observations and the potential for employee exposure. Option C. Advise the caller to wait for further instructions while attempting to contact the business owner for clarification on the situation. Option D. Dispatch a standard fire engine and ambulance without specific hazardous materials designation, assuming it is a minor chemical spill. Correct answer is B. Dispatch appropriate fire service units with a hazardous materials response designation and relay all available information, including the caller's observations and the potential for employee exposure. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation due to the inherent urgency and potential for rapid escalation of a hazardous materials incident. The telecommunicator must quickly assess the risk to public safety and the environment based on limited initial information, while simultaneously initiating appropriate emergency response protocols. The challenge lies in balancing the need for immediate action with the requirement for accurate information gathering and resource allocation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate risk assessment and the dispatch of appropriate resources based on the initial information provided. This aligns with the fundamental principles of emergency dispatch, emphasizing the telecommunicator's role in ensuring public safety by initiating a timely and effective response. The regulatory framework for public safety telecommunicators, PST, mandates a proactive approach to potential threats, requiring the telecommunicator to act decisively when a credible risk is identified. This approach upholds the ethical obligation to protect life and property. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves delaying the dispatch of resources pending further confirmation or detailed information. This failure violates the core principle of prompt emergency response, potentially leading to a delayed or inadequate mitigation of a hazardous situation, thereby increasing risk to the public and responders. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the urgency inherent in hazardous materials incidents and the potential for rapid spread or exposure. Another incorrect approach is to dispatch a minimal response without considering the potential severity of a hazardous materials incident. This demonstrates a failure to conduct an adequate risk assessment based on the initial report. Hazardous materials incidents can quickly escalate, and an insufficient initial response can lead to a cascade of problems, including overwhelming the responding units and increasing the danger to the community. This approach neglects the procedural guidelines for hazardous materials incidents, which often require specialized equipment and personnel from the outset. A third incorrect approach is to dispatch resources without gathering any additional information or attempting to clarify the nature of the substance. This is a reckless disregard for proper procedure and resource management. While speed is important, a complete lack of information gathering can lead to sending the wrong type of resources, potentially wasting valuable time and resources, and even placing responders in unnecessary danger if the materials are highly specialized or require specific containment. This approach fails to adhere to established protocols for incident assessment and resource allocation. Professional reasoning. In situations involving potential hazardous materials, telecommunicators should follow a structured decision-making process. This begins with active listening and information gathering to establish the nature of the incident, location, and any reported hazards. Based on this initial assessment, the telecommunicator should consult established protocols for hazardous materials incidents, which will guide the selection of appropriate initial response units and the type of information to relay to those units. Simultaneously, They should initiate the dispatch process to ensure the fastest possible response, while continuing to gather information and update responding units as it becomes available. This systematic approach balances urgency with accuracy and ensures compliance with regulatory requirements for effective emergency response. Question 19. Assessment of a public safety radio system during a widespread severe weather event reveals multiple reports of intermittent and degraded radio coverage across a significant portion of the service area. Telecommunicators are receiving reports from various units experiencing static, dropped transmissions, and inability to reach dispatch or other units. The event is ongoing, and emergency response is at a critical level. What is the most appropriate initial course of action for a public safety telecommunicator, PST, to take to address these radio communication issues? Option A. Advise field units that the radio system is experiencing issues and to continue trying to transmit periodically, as the problem may resolve itself with time. Option B. Instruct all field units to immediately switch to using their personal mobile phones for all communications until the radio system issues are resolved. Option C. Immediately initiate a system-wide diagnostic scan and consult the radio system's technical support log for known issues or ongoing maintenance alerts, while simultaneously advising field units to attempt communication via alternate channels if available and safe. Option D. Attempt to remotely reconfigure the radio system's primary repeater settings to boost signal strength, as this is a common fix for coverage problems. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a system-wide diagnostic scan and consult the radio system's technical support log for known issues or ongoing maintenance alerts, while simultaneously advising field units to attempt communication via alternate channels if available and safe. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of public safety communication and the potential for cascading failures if radio systems are not managed effectively during a widespread emergency. The telecommunicator must balance immediate operational needs with long-term system integrity and adherence to established protocols. The rapid deterioration of radio coverage during a disaster requires swift, informed decision-making under pressure, where incorrect choices can lead to communication breakdowns, delayed response, and compromised safety for both the public and first responders. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based troubleshooting process aligned with established public safety telecommunicator, PST certification guidelines. This involves verifying the issue with multiple users, consulting system status reports, and escalating to specialized technical support. This methodical approach ensures that the problem is accurately identified and addressed efficiently, minimizing disruption to critical communications. It adheres to the principle of maintaining operational readiness and utilizing available resources effectively, as mandated by PST certification standards, which emphasize systematic problem-solving and adherence to established protocols for radio system operation and troubleshooting. An incorrect approach that involves immediately attempting complex reprogramming without proper diagnosis is professionally unacceptable. This action bypasses essential diagnostic steps, potentially exacerbating the problem or introducing new issues. It violates PST guidelines regarding radio maintenance and programming, which require trained personnel and adherence to specific procedures to prevent system instability. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of adherence to established radio troubleshooting protocols, which emphasize a step-by-step approach to identify the root cause before implementing solutions. Another incorrect approach, such as assuming the issue is isolated to a single unit and advising users to switch to personal mobile phones, is also professionally unacceptable. While personal phones might offer a temporary alternative, they are not a reliable or secure substitute for dedicated public safety radio systems, especially during a disaster when cellular networks can become overloaded or fail. This approach neglects the primary function of the radio system and fails to address the underlying coverage issue, potentially leading to a complete communication blackout if the radio system remains unaddressed. It also disregards the security and interoperability advantages of the radio system. A further incorrect approach, such as ignoring the reported issues due to high call volume, is a severe ethical and professional failure. Public safety communication is paramount, and any reported system malfunction, especially during a disaster, requires immediate attention and investigation. This inaction directly contravenes the core responsibilities of a PST, which include ensuring the functionality of communication systems to support emergency response, demonstrates a disregard for the safety of responders and the public, and a failure to uphold the standards of diligence and responsiveness expected of certified PSTs. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and document the report of the issue. 2. Attempt to verify the issue with multiple users in different locations. 3. Consult available system status indicators or logs. 4. Follow established troubleshooting checklists for radio coverage issues. 5. Escalate the issue to the appropriate technical support or supervisor if initial steps do not resolve the problem. 6. Maintain clear and concise communication with affected users regarding the status of the troubleshooting efforts. 7. Document all actions taken and their outcomes. Question 20. Comparative studies suggest that effective public safety telecommunicator (PST) performance hinges on the ability to manage multiple, concurrent demands. Imagine a PST receiving a call reporting a structure fire with visible flames and smoke, and simultaneously, their CAD system alerts them to an incoming call from a different line. The PST must quickly assess and act. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and compliant course of action according to PST certification standards? Option A. Attempt to gather detailed information for both calls simultaneously, speaking to both callers at once to ensure all details are captured without delay. Option B. Inform the structure fire caller that another call is incoming and ask them to wait while the PST handles the new call to determine its nature. Option C. Prioritize gathering essential information for the structure fire, location, nature of fire, immediate threats, and initiate dispatch, then immediately address the second incoming call, gathering its essential information and initiating appropriate action. Option D. Immediately place the structure fire caller on hold to fully address the incoming call, ensuring no new caller is neglected. The correct answer is D. Immediately place the structure fire caller on hold to fully address the incoming call, ensuring no new caller is neglected. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public safety telecommunications, managing a high-priority, rapidly evolving incident while simultaneously receiving a potentially critical, but less immediately life-threatening call. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for accurate information and resource dispatch for the active emergency with the obligation to properly handle all incoming calls, ensuring no critical information is missed or delayed. Effective judgment requires rapid assessment, prioritization based on established protocols, and efficient information gathering under pressure. The correct approach represents best professional practice by adhering to established public safety telecommunicator (PST) certification guidelines, which emphasize prioritizing immediate life or death situations while ensuring all calls are addressed. This involves quickly gathering the most critical information for the active incident, location, nature of threat, number of individuals involved, and initiating dispatch, then immediately pivoting to the second call, gathering essential details and initiating appropriate response or referral. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate efficient and effective emergency response, minimizing dispatch delays for critical incidents and ensuring all callers receive appropriate attention according to established protocols. An incorrect approach of solely focusing on the second call, delaying dispatch for the active fire, represents a critical failure in prioritization and potentially violates regulations mandating immediate response to life-threatening emergencies. This could lead to increased property damage, injury, or loss of life. Another incorrect approach of attempting to gather exhaustive details for both calls simultaneously would lead to information overload, potential errors, and significant delays in dispatching resources to the active fire, again violating core PST responsibilities. Finally, an approach that dismisses the second call as non-emergency without proper screening and information gathering would be a failure to adhere to protocols for handling all incoming calls, potentially missing vital information for a secondary incident or a delayed but still important emergency. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a clear understanding of call prioritization protocols, the ability to quickly extract essential information, and the skill to manage multiple tasks efficiently. Telecommunicators should be trained to recognize the urgency of different situations, utilize CAD system prompts effectively, and communicate clearly and concisely to gather necessary details without compromising the integrity of the information or the speed of response.